If you plan to speak on the public hearing and haven't signed up, we're going to take that sign-up sheet up in about 5 minutes.
Well, good morning, afternoon, whatever time it is.
Hey guys, I don't know yet.
Oh, that's fine. I'm just, it's informal.
I read your mind.
I left him. So Bob's good? No, I just said fancy you just said.
Oh, I'm gonna make a motion in a second.
Yeah, he'll say it. Dan will say it.
Becky? Becky?
I had said, I left him a message to come. Just that's why I got Rachel.
We call them, you got two groups in here that can solve it. Yep.
Young? Is he getting money or? Did somebody see John Jacob benefit from it? Any elected school board. Something I needed to see you about, and I forgot what it was. I guess our bill is okay with the, like we dowry and all that. We got the amendment on it.
But I think
Let me know if there's anything anybody I can talk to.
no, you go ahead. I'm gonna be first up, and then I've got to get back upstate.
Welcome to Education Policy Committee. If you've not already, please silence your phone. Because we go into session and there's another committee in here at 2:45, we are going to be moving relatively quickly. And so I thank you for being here, and I'll call on Vice Chair Baker to open us in prayer.
If you'll join me in prayer. Heavenly Father, just how good it is just be able to pause and just reflect on your goodness, and thank you, Lord, for all the many blessings that you share with us. Father, we just pray that as we meet now that you provide wisdom, discernment going forth. Father, we pray for each of those that are part of this process that are gathered in this room, the blessings upon each of these families represented. Father, just ask now that you bless and guide in the business of our meeting. We ask all this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. Clerk will call the roll.
Representative Collins.
Here.
Representative Baker.
Here.
Representative Drummond. Representative Daniels. Representative DuBose. Representative Estes. Representative Fincher. Representative Gidley. Representative Gray. Representative Holt Jones. Representative Morris. Representative Paramore. Representative Pascal. Representative Smith. Representative Woods.
Here.
A quorum is present.
Thank you. We're going to go a little out of order. We have Senator Price in here, and so first we're going to call up Senate Bill 279. Welcome
Madam
to
Chairman.
Education Policy.
Well, thank you. Thank you for allowing me where I can get back upstairs to my committee up there. So this bill is a bill that I think once you kind of figure out really what it's doing, we've had a problem as far as especially some of the adjustments that we've made for some of our teachers, that I feel like that what happened with some of our school boards with elected superintendents, thought that also would apply to them. So a few weeks ago, I got with Rachel and her staff, and we talked about what we can do as far as from the audit standpoint to make sure that no one had a problem. So what this bill actually does is it takes elected superintendents and appointed superintendents, and they will be treated salary-wise as same. And what we mean by that is during their term or their contract, that if the board elects to opts to give them a raise, that they can do so. In the educational side of the election process, understand most of you have elected school boards. Your elected school boards are really the governing body, and the superintendent acts as the chair. So it will not be a decision that a superintendent can give him or herself a raise without the permission of the board. That's it in the gist, please.
Thank you. I appreciate it, Senator Price. Are there any questions? Representative Gray.
At the proper time, can I move for a favorable report?
You may have a first and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. The bill's given favorable report.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Thank you, committee.
Second up, I'm going to call HB 503, Representative Estes, and you may just stay where you are.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. HB 503, as you hear so many times, is actually really is a very simple, straightforward bill. What this bill does, many of you may know, there is currently a prohibition in state code from a member of the City Council serving on an appointed Board of Education. Just to give you a few numbers, there are currently 73 city boards of education, 67 county boards. Of the 73 city boards, 24 are elected and 49 are appointed. So of those city boards, 36 do not, of the city boards that are appointed, only 36 do not receive compensation at this time, and this bill would only impact those boards. But what this will do here, and as the current code already says, if you're a member of the City Council, you cannot serve on the Board of Education. What it does, it extends that by just simply adding the mayor of that particular community and prohibits the mayor in those areas where boards are appointed from serving on the City Council. So you're expanding from City Council to City Council and mayor.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Representative Fincher.
I move a favorable report. You have a question?
Okay, we have a motion for a favorable report by Representative Fincher, a second by Representative Smith, and I'll call on for a comment, Representative Baker.
Just thank you, Madam Chair. Just a point of discussion on this. I see this is on page 2 on line 32. It mentions the mayor of the city. I know that oftentimes, and if you actually look across on page 3, it mentions on item 58, then any city or town. So there is a distinction between city or town. I assume that you wanted to cover towns as well, even though it only makes mention of city there.
Yes, sir. That's, of course, that's already an existing code, as you know more so well than I do, Vice Chairman, because there's nothing being changed there. That's already existing code. I think it really could have just, existing code really could just say city, because I don't know what you would consider a town, although there may be. But my understanding, the definition of town is population of under 2,000. And so I'm not saying there's not a system that small out there, but yes, it would, if that wording is necessary, it would cover both.
Okay, I just wanted to make certain of that. I know that, and across my district is down actually in Baldwin County. I guess it was Loxley that just recently moved from a town to a city status. And I think maybe the number was 6,000 or so or something like that. I don't remember exactly. So I just wanted to make sure that within, the parameters of what might already be in statute or such in identifying a city or town,
Yes.
because I think that's the intent of what you would like. So I just wanted to ensure that.
It is. So thank you for that clarification.
Thank
As
you.
I said, that's already part of existing code. All we're doing is simply adding the mayor to the members of the city council, saying neither would be eligible to serve on that board.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Thank you for bringing up that point. Are there any other comments or questions? Okay, we have a motion for a favorable report and a second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? The bill is given a favorable report.
Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Next, I'm going to turn the gavel over to Vice Chair, and we're going to do HB 269.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The next bill up then would be HB 269. Then, Madam Chair Collins, you're recognized.
I'm going to ask everyone to look. This is the bill we had the public hearing for last week. I worked over the weekend and truly have accepted every single amendment I believe I was presented. We have worked our way through, and I'm going to go through each one with you as quickly as I can. If you remember, the goal of this is to actually, and it's on page 6, but to have appropriate and consistent disciplinary process, and due process is the goal. So my request is to not be upset with the Senate sponsor, but to consider all the changes that I have made in this legislation. Okay, thank you for all who worked with me. Section 1 is completely out from the last bill because it was just declarations that Representative Fincher didn't care for, so it's gone. You're welcome. We added a definition of substantial classroom disruption because we're going to use that later in the bill. Wanting consistent has been a part of the goal all along. A student, we did not say through 5th grade, but through under 12 years old. We added long-term to suspension. I'm on line 62, and I apologize, I am going quickly. Line 65 is where we added, or a third reason for that, which would be causes substantial classroom disruption. My part I really like the most is that they may not be suspended or expelled on line 70 through 72 for truancy or tardiness, because our goal is to keep students in school so that they can continue to learn. If you look on the top of page 4, I believe is the next change, that the neutral and then the agreed upon for the disciplinary hearing has been removed, so that's no longer in there. If you look down on number 2 on 994, or really it's 95 and 96, if after written notice, if there is no response, then the hearing can be waived. If you look on down the page, on line 103, if you'll see, we deleted that names of any students, students that have presented something has come out. We added at the very bottom of that page on 111, good cause. 5 days. On line 125, I believe, in offering evidence, we took out intent because it's hard to determine someone's intent. We added the part about students under 14 years of age who are present only could be spoken to and asked questions. The state board adopts the policy. Oh, we added on line 166, any other issues the board deems relevant. My goal was to continue to give local boards of education as much leniency as they can to discipline and to take care of business. But as we said, this bill is for long-term suspension, and if you look at the definition of that on the second page, that is for more than 90 days, that's expulsion for more than 90 days, and long-term suspension is for over 10 and less than 90 days. So this is a long time students would be out. I'm happy to answer any questions, Mr. Chair.
Representative Drummond, you're recognized.
I wanted to commend the sponsor because all of my concerns have been addressed, especially the word intent. So
Thank you.
that's a biggie for me.
Thank you.
But I want to thank you. Unlike the Senate, you have made the appropriate changes. So at the proper time, I'd like to give the bill a favorable report.
Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Drummond. We'll hold on that motion at the time. I think there's some further comments or questions, but thank you so much. Representative Fincher, were you asking to be recognized?
I just wanted to say, you listened to the committee comments.
Every word.
And this is a major overhaul.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for listening.
You're welcome.
Representative Smith, you're recognized.
Yes, Chairman, how would this affect in-school suspension where a child is removed?
This doesn't affect that.
Okay. Second thing was your wording a while ago, students who are present. Are you saying present in the office, present at school?
At the hearing, it's on line 133.
Okay, so if a student if the hearing is held at the school, the student is in school, does that make that person eligible?
No, at the hearing.
All right, thank you. And I appreciate.
That was important to me as well.
I appreciate your work on this.
One follow-up on that, Madam Chair. This is in regards to, so in the bill, it does mention suspension, and then Representative Smith asked the question then regarding in-school suspension. So there is a distinction within the bill in regards to in-school suspension and suspension. I don't know that I saw that.
It's not addressing in-school suspension, only expelling or long-term.
Okay,
It's only about those two.
right, but could that not be interpreted, I guess, once again, by those that saying that it cannot be expelled, the expulsion or suspension? So I'm just wondering, since that's not clarified, if that could be interpreted as in school.
I've not heard that interpreted that way. That issue's not come up. I don't know if anybody from the Department of,
There's not a distinction in the bill, and that's why I just sort of bring that question to the
and
forefront. Because I think that is of concern to educators out in the field.
my interpretation of
limited,
this
yeah.
was that it was just for out of school suspensions and out of school expulsions. That's how they interpret it as well.
Now, you're saying that's who is interpreting?
Department of Ed.
You want me right here? Just as we've read through the piece of legislation, we've never once interpreted it as in-school suspension.
So if this were being challenged in a court of law, how would that be interpreted?
Well, I think you would refer to the technical terms whenever you are, you have a punishment in that sort, it is going to be referred to as in-school suspension or out-of-school suspension. I think they would only.
But the bill doesn't specify.
I haven't had anybody bring up any issues about it to me. I haven't been really involved in the work on it.
Right. And I'm not being accusatory.
Here's what I would say in those in the definitions on line 37 and then on line 40, it says exclusion from a regular school environment. So I'm thinking they're out of their regular school. And my interpretation, having children who have been in school suspension, it was at school, not away.
Right, and not to belabor a point too much, but sometimes these in-school suspensions occur not actually at the school, but other locations, so it's not in their normal, traditional, maybe school setting. So once again, I just get a little concerned because once again, no disrespect to any attorneys that may be here in the room, but I understand how that could be interpreted or challenged then in regards to it doesn't seem to specify on the
Right.
expulsion or suspension, although I recognize and respect in the State Department on its interpretation that this would not qualify as
Right. Through any
in
conversations
school.
we've had, we've always read it as out of school suspension. And I don't want to speak for my boss. Obviously, I haven't had this conversation with him. But if it came down to it, we would, probably provide some sort of guidance that would clarify it pertains to out of school suspension.
Right. And with all due respect to the State Department of Education, sometimes the State Department of Education might be acknowledged in a court of law in regards to their opinion on it, but to be strictly the opinion, whereas it would be others actually making that decision,
Right.
such as a judge or such in regards to, no.
Right. Ultimately, it would be the judge that made a decision. But I mean,
Right.
when the law, if it passed out of here, if it passed and became law enacted, we could provide guidance at that time through some sort of memorandum to
Right.
superintendents.
Thank you so much, and Madam Chair, thank you as much then. And I just say that was something then as well a concern of mine as a former educator, as I think a former educator then, Representative Smith also we've shared a little bit of light concern on that as well then, but we can move on.
I would say
Madam
that
Chair.
from my experience today, I think since it's just a House bill moving at the very end, I am very open to amendments if we see that is needed as we move on.
Thank you so much. Representative Pascal, you're recognized.
Okay, thank you. Madam Chairman, great job with the amendments. Just a question regarding the data that we requested.
Yes.
I received that. I would love to work with you and the State Department as far as just kind of cleaning this up and making it a little more friendly, but definitely appreciate the amendments and the job you have done with the bill.
Thank you.
Representative Drummond, comment or question? We're still not, on the motion, I think there's still one or two that might like to comment. So did you have a question or comment?
Same thing, sir.
Oh, okay. If you'll just bear with us just a moment, please. All right, Leader Daniels, you're recognized.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Madam Chair, I guess with all the changes that have been made, I want to make certain that the education community is open to think that this is a piece of legislation that they can support now, because I kind of tend to err on the side of allowing local school districts to kind of set their own policies and really run the education process the way they deem is appropriate and necessary instead of legislating it. And so I just want to really understand where they are, even with the changes on this piece of legislation. And I know that we're voting on this today, and I just want to make certain that I understand exactly, are they 100% comfortable with this or not? And that's kind of going to determine where I vote, how I vote on it.
Well, I'm going to be just very honest, is that I've taken every amendment that was given to me and worked with them. I don't think that we'll ever get 100% confidence.
So I'd like to hear where
You're
they
welcome
are,
to.
where the gaps are, where are the gaps, where are the difference in if you're close, and where are the differences, and whether or not those are significant differences that we need to be taken into consideration before voting.
Any further, any of the education entities that would want to express opinions in regards? Okay.
Yes, sir. School Superintendents of Alabama, I've not seen the sub, so just on what I talked about in here last week and in the previous years, there's been a little bit of question about regular school environment, and so that was raised, the long-term suspension definition of more than 10 days. So you still get back to the point of when you consider that piece of the bill, and I don't know the line numbers, Representative Collins, but when you look at that piece, it's talking about long-term suspensions. You can, and I read off the list of suspensions, things that our districts had suspended children for in grades K through 5 that would now be long-term suspension. So it would still apply if a child is at school under the influence of alcohol or brings alcohol to school or drugs to school, that I could not, in a grade K through 5, that I could not suspend that kid long-term, which would be more than 10 days, because the conditions for the suspension are in danger to others, or I think vandalism of more than $1,000, I think are the two reasons. So,
No, there's 3 now.
okay, so, yeah, so I
Excuse
don't
me.
have that. I can only speak.
I
to what-
included the one that was requested about the substantial classroom disruption.
Yeah, so the drug and alcohol policies of the district that would most consider that to be a Class 3 offense, like at the top, right? So, and those students would be removed from school. Well, I don't buy this if it's a grade K through 5, and believe it or not, we have children that are K through 5 that happens. I don't think our districts would be able to remove those children under the way I understand you describing the sub now. And that's a kind of a concern of ours. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Representative Smith, you're recognized. Oh, I'm sorry. Ms. Smith, I'm sorry, I did not see you approaching the mic then. Representative Smith, if you don't mind then deferring just for a moment then, thank you. Then the lady Smith, if you will, please go ahead.
Thank you. Sally Smith, Alabama School Boards, and we appreciate the sponsor and chair hearing our concerns. And so we have withdrawn our opposition. We think that the bill addresses our primary concerns. We're satisfied that the definition of in-school long-term suspension will allow us to deal with in-school, and the classification that suspension, that the only suspension we're talking about is long-term, that we will be able to do short-term suspensions of students under the age limit. So we thank you for working with us.
Thank you for your comments. Representative Smith, you're recognized.
I feel like it's the same thing, and it's on line 59 where it says his or her regular school environment. When you have a child of this age and you place them in an in-school suspension class, are they considered to be in their regular school environment?
That's the part that's the part I think that I'm willing to continue to listen to. I believe that Ms. Smith just said that she felt like that was out of school and not regular school. I think that's the intent of the language on those definitions, but if we need to adjust that, I'm happy to work with that.
Okay, thank you so much.
Follow up on that.
Okay. Representative Smith, continue.
This is a much better bill than it was to start with, and there have been many that have put work in, and I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for your comments. Mr. Vic Wilson, I think you need to, or want to make comments in regards.
I just want to speak on the word regular.
Okay.
The adjective is what's going to be.
If you don't mind, just
My name is
for others that may not be
Vic
aware, then
Wilson. I'm the
identify.
Executive Director of class.
Thank you.
And I represent all the principals in the state. When special education lawyers and any other attorney looks at a school environment, you have environment is the noun, school environment is your adjective. Regular school environment takes it another step. If you take the word regular out, now you've got school environment. We want to keep kids in school. We do. If a child is persistently disruptive and can't be taken out of the classroom, think about what that can do to the rest of the classroom. I can keep that child in school by putting him or her in school suspension or even timeout if it's elementary, and not disrupt the school environment because that's not his or her regular. We want the environment to be the school. And if I keep you in school, even if it's in an in-school suspension type situation, I'm able to educate you better than if we have to put you out of school.
Yes.
So the word regular is what gives me pause. That's the only word in there, and I do commend all of you guys for working on this. You've worked very hard, and your changes are very well received. So I hope that helps.
Thank you for the comments. Any other? Okay.
Just,
Representative Gidley.
yeah, I don't know where that word regular is. I was trying to find that, but
It's in the definitions.
line 40, okay, all right, back.
And
So, and what you're
37.
saying, Representative Collins, is that you're willing, if this is passed out, to look at some other amendments to correct some little.
Certainly.
Yeah, okay. And again, you have worked hard. Thank you.
Okay. Representative DuBose.
the lone no vote on this, but to Representative Daniels' point, I've talked to all my superintendents, 3 superintendents in 3 very different school districts, and they all want the decisions to be made as close to the local level as possible. And it seems like we're trying to fit a round peg in a square hole by making all these amendments and just forcing it to work when we can just have the local superintendents and the local schools and the local school boards do what it is they're supposed to be doing. So I'm a no vote.
Jerome, if you'll forgive me, I forget the last name. Thank you, Dees. Thank you. Mr. Dees, then you're recognized. If you'll identify your entity as well for those that may not know.
Absolutely. Jerome Dees, Policy Director for Southern Poverty Law Center. Did want to speak directly to Representative DuBose's concerns or questions. I want to make sure that everybody, actually, all of the members, understand that in this hearing process, ultimately the decision is still going to rest with the local board or their designee. That decision is still a local decision in the hands of that local school board. I think it's important to also note that if they're absent this, if there is some sort of appeal as things stand right now, if you are in a school district that covers a significant ground, significant jurisdiction, that's taking it out of the hands of that local board. And so I think by setting up this due process that gives clear guidelines to all parties involved, whether it's student, parent, or the administration, it makes it clear that the first hands on that decision are going to be whoever that local board is or their designee. So I want to make sure that everyone understands that we're not trying to strip power away from the local board or the superintendent's district. They will be the ones who make that decision. After the evidence is brought up, after any questions are presented, they are the ones who make the final decision and the final determination of what that punishment is. And again, thank you all so much for having open minds and just allowing me to continue to work with you all. And thank you to the education groups as well.
Thank you, Mr. Dees, and all of the entities that have worked with the sponsor of the bill on this particular piece of legislation. With that, then, or any other questions or comments? We then already have then a motion on the floor to give the bill a. Oh, thank you. All right, I need then maybe to revise our motion then.
I'd like to revise the motion to adopt the substitute.
Motion to adopt the sub, second by Gray. Any discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? With that then, the sub has been adopted. And now a motion?
I'd like to motion to give the sub a favorable report.
All right, there's been a motion to give the sub a favorable report, a second by Representative Gray. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
The ayes have it. The bill is given a favorable report. With that, then, I turn the gavel back over to the chair.
Chairman, I think we need a roll call vote on that. Was pretty close.
And I'm sorry, it is, the roll call has to be requested beforehand. And I want to tell the committee, I continue to support any changes that you've got with this. And so, but in the sake of time, we are going to move on right now. We're going to move to now House Bill 489. Representative Robbins.
Chairwoman, thank you for your time. I didn't have a chance to give this to y'all beforehand, but here's an article y'all can pass around. That my bill, HB 489, is dealing with school devices such as tablets. And the point of the bill is that it would require that every school board would place a filter on their device, which would prohibit and prevent students enrolled in and attending schools from accessing social media platforms through the use of internet provided by the local Board of Education. And on top of that, it would create a class that would begin in the 2024-25 school years for students entering the 9th grade to complete one semester or equivalent thereof for age-appropriate, developmentally appropriate instruction on the risk of social media, how to use social media safely, and this content would be approved by the State Department of Education and would be listed on their website. And each local board of education will notify the parents of where to access the instructional materials about this social media safety class. So, and the article that I provided you, it just so happened that yesterday the U.S. Surgeon General issued a warning that social media use in teens' mental health, basically issued an urgent public warning, which states that an advisory that children need to stay off social media and the dangers that it causes to them mentally and psychologically. And the American Psychology Association has also issued reports recommending that teenagers need to stay off social media. And so this bill would help protect government devices that we own from allowing children to access things that could help affect them mentally and physically. So I think there will be an amendment. So
Thank you, Representative Robbins. I would agree completely that this could be one of the biggest problems that we have, especially with mental health, especially with maybe middle school. So I want to thank you for trying to address this issue. Are there any questions for Representative Robbins? Representative Estes is recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I just want to clarify a point with Representative Collins, or excuse me, Representative Robbins, on this bill. When you're saying block access, you're not talking about each individual cell phone. You're talking about the school system putting in a filter on its in-house system that would prevent it from being distributed out to individual phones.
correct. I'm talking about what are government issued. You know how every school student now gets a tablet, so it's government owned. So we, as the government, as the school board, have the authority to control what is on that device. So this is the school making sure that there are things in place to prevent the access of social media. And not only that, even if they try to access it on the Wi-Fi in the school on their personal cell phone, they wouldn't be allowed to on the Wi-Fi.
Thank you for that clarification.
Representative Jabos.
I have a question, and I'm probably the least technical person here, so this may be a dumb question, but it says using internet access. But what if you're on your phone, your internet's turned off, and you're just using that data access? Because usually tablets and phones can just access that data world.
Right. Well, there's two issues there. One is if it's a school issued tablet, we're going to go ahead and put those filters in place on that because it's government issued. If you're on your personal phone, if your parents give you a phone and you access the data, there's nothing we can do as the government to stop that. But if you access the Wi-Fi, the school board will be able to prevent that. But to answer your question, one, they're not supposed to, but they do. So if they have their phone and they access the data, they're using data, then no, this bill would not be able to stop them from doing that.
What about with the pads you're talking about? Because they can operate on data as well, right?
But what I'm talking about with the pads, they would be government issued. They'd be school issued. So we would try to prevent them from accessing that by placing those filters on the pad themselves.
So that would also block data access using.
I know you have a good question. I'm not a technology expert, but yes, my understanding is that it would.
Representative Drummond.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I guess I'm looking for a clarification and maybe somebody in the education community, because I know after COVID and all of those tablets were issued to students, they couldn't access the internet. I thought that there was already some sort of a screen on them where they could not get that kind of information. So that's my first question.
I can answer that. Yes, you are correct. They are not allowed to or supposed to now, and I'm just further clarifying that. And then the main crux of the bill is that education component. So if you look on page 8, the most underlying part is that new class, that education piece that we'd be giving to high school children on the dangers of social media, plus how to use it how to use it safely. So that's the main crux of the.
Well, I'm good with that, but even with that though, and I've had this in another piece of legislation because I see the words keep popping up. Who defines what is age appropriate and developmentally appropriate instructions?
Well,
Who defines all of that?
Well, the Supreme Court.
No, I'm talking about here in Alabama.
Well, what I was going to say is that here in Alabama, based upon our laws that the U.S. Supreme Court has interpreted, that age appropriateness depends on the community in which you live. So in Alabama, it would be something that'd be age appropriate according to as local a government as possible. So in this case, it'd be the school board or the State Department of Education. So it would be a determination made by elected officials on what is and is not age appropriate, is my understanding.
Okay, I've still got other questions because I'm not clear because I thought we were already doing this.
We're not doing the training. We're not
I
doing
underst-
this educational component on the dangers of social media. The
And
addictive
what age
nature of it.
will that be done?
It would start in the 9th grade.
So it would be 9 through 12?
Right. You could take a class between 9th and 12th grade.
But what about the elementary students? Again, I always tell you guys, I've got a 7-year-old who can maneuver my phone better than I. So,
Right.
I mean,
Well-
are we missing the mark there?
I mean, I'm fine if you want to lower the number, the grade.
Well,
I mean, I'm just saying that this is so. The reason the 9th grade is this was something that I worked out with Facebook, with Meta, on an age number that they've
You
set
worked
it.
out with whom?
With Meta, who owns Facebook and Instagram. That 9th grade was where we kind of landed. But if you want to lower the number in an amendment, I mean, I'd be open to that or talking with you further about this bill.
What can you tell me? Have you got education to buy into this? Because I'm not interested because Facebook is who you're trying to regulate, right?
Well,
It's like the fox watching the hen house.
I'd say I'm not.
I mean,
trying
that
to-
doesn't, I mean, I'm sorry, I just, that one doesn't.
Well, Representative Drummond, I'm not trying to regulate the industry. This is not
You're trying to give, take away some of the access for young people, right?
Well, what we're trying to do is educate people on the dangers. One, yes, we're trying to control access, but we're also trying to educate children on the dangers of social media. And so it's not a all-out regulatory process. We're not setting up some regulatory body to oversee it in terms of how we regulate social media or the internet. This is just a bite of the apple of what is a major problem with our children. And there are lots of bites that need to be taken of this apple, and this is just one of them. And it's one that can be worked on and changed, but this is an approach that I wanted to pursue.
And I appreciate that. I also appreciate and agree with Representative Drummond that I'd love at least to look at down to through middle school, if not earlier. Representative Daniels.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Representative Robbins, you mentioned the course for 9th and 12th grade, and I agree with Representative Drummond that we do need to consider lower grades if we're going to kind of educate the kids on the risk and safety of social media in general. A lot of students today carry cell phones. And so while they may not be able to access social media through the laptops, they will be able to access it through their cell phones. And I see here where you, the school board internet, prohibiting from whatever the internet is at school. And so I just want to make certain that if we're going to try to prohibit the use during school time, is there another mechanism that we could use to even deal with those that have cell phones unless the local school board have cell phone policies?
Right. Well, I agree with, you said this earlier, Representative or Leader Daniels, that, the local school board is the best place to set those policies on on whether you allow cell phones, when they can access their cell phones. And so, I agree that I think, in my personal opinion, there should be policies that cell phones should just be completely outlawed, and students should not have access to their cell phones because they distract kids from education and learning. But, to answer your question, that would be something that each local school board would have to set up on when kids would be able to access it or not. And in terms of the data, there's nothing we can do to stop someone from using a phone and using their data. Short of saying you cannot even use your phone. And that would solve the problem right there. If you just said you can't use your phone, then we're not having a debate on whether you're using data or Wi-Fi. Or, if you're of a certain age, you just can't even have a phone, period. And say, sorry, it's against the law for you to have a phone, just like it's against the law for you to smoke a cigarette. I mean, those are, if you want to go broad and solve the problem, that's the only way to solve it.
Well, from a safety issue, I would be kind of torn between banning the total use itself for emergency purposes. And the other thing for sporting events, and as you're talking about the local school board internet, just want to make certain that when it comes to sporting events, a lot of times in rural communities, access to Wi-Fi is very limited. And so when they're at sporting events, a lot of folks kind of download to whatever the public or local use on that campus. And so I just want us to kind of think broadly about the unintended consequences that this may have in general.
Yeah, and again, like I said to Representative Drummond, I'd be willing to talk more about how we control as a government body, how do we, I guess for lack of better, regulate the use of data for students. But, this is, I guess Representative Robbins' thoughts, and then they're out for y'all to debate and change as you see fit. So I'm open to any conversations you'd like to have or anybody else would like to have about that issue. Thank you.
Representative Hope Jones.
Thank you. Would you refresh your definition of course? How long is that?
The course would be a half semester.
Half year. Which is how long?
Oh, not half semester, a 1 semester. I don't know what I said. I was thinking half a year, which would be 1 semester. Sorry. It's 1 semester, which would be a fall or spring.
Okay.
So it'd be an elective that you would take.
210, it says 1/2 credit, which is 1 semester.
Right. Yeah. In 209, it says shall complete 1 semester. And then 210 says, which equals 1/2 credit.
Thank you. I certainly agree with everything you're doing in theory, but I just wonder about the content of all of this, taking a whole half a semester, in addition to all the issues we have now of getting a student to graduation by the time they have the electives that they want to take, and now we're putting other requirements in there. It's just tough to have. I mean, it's just a scheduling issue. I hear that every day.
And I hear your point exactly. It's a scheduling issue, and it's always a struggle on how do you put the whole piece together? But I would say that technology is becoming more and more prevalent every day, and the use of technology, the use of social media. That's how people will communicate. That's how we communicate. That's how children will communicate. In the future, will become more and more and more and more prevalent. It will be the means of communication. And so unless we learn and teach the means of communication, we will not have children that will be able to use those means of communication. It's just like how we used to teach typing because we used typewriters. Then we learned, processing because we started using computers. Well, we are at technology for thousands of years was at this rate. In the last 5 years, it's been at this rate in a chart. Unless we start thinking in terms of where are we going to be and how do we keep our children safe and then properly use that technology, we're going to be falling behind. And so to me, I understand it's a puzzle. We've got to figure out how you fit everyone in their schedule and their time. But this is typing of 40 years ago. This is computer processing of 20 years ago. So we've got to learn it.
And Representative Dubose and I need the whole semester, maybe even the whole year. But to our 5 and 10 and 15-year-olds, they need 5 minutes, for what takes us. So that's my concern, in addition to just getting them to graduate.
And I understand your point completely.
Representative Smith.
The theory is good, and we do need to help educate our young people on down into those lower areas, as was mentioned by the leader and by my friend, Ms. DuBose. Excuse me, Ms. Drummond. And
we look alike.
You do. Little levity there. I guess that's a Freudian slip, isn't it? Anyway, but here's the problem. Have you ever tried to make out a schedule in high school? Who's going to teach this? Because here's the thing, you're putting in a semester of this, which is great. That's wonderful, okay? And we just put in a semester of financial education, and we're trying to teach, especially those in those younger group, we're trying to get them through reading and math and get them proficient there, and we're piling on things onto the teachers that they've got to teach. I just don't know how you're going to get it all in, because here's the deal. You know, if you go through a Manning board, and especially if you're at a small school where you have few instructors and you have the units you've earned, and then you have the units that are in special education that maybe don't carry as large a load, but they have tremendous needs there. But when you start trying to sort out those people and have a place for students to go every period and have the instruction presented, I can think back and go, I don't know what I'm going to do, because I don't have a place. What do you want me to do away with? You want me to do away with choral music? You want me to do away with art? You want me to do away with computers and technical type sciences? You know, what do you want to do away with so I can have this? Now, it's needful, but I don't see how we put a semester in there when most of the young people already know more about it than we do. And so I understand the controls. I understand that, but here's the thing. We can control them for those periods, those 8 hours, 7 hours that they're at school. But what about the rest of the time? I think we've just spinning our wheels the rest of the time, because they're going to access whatever they want to.
I want to thank you too. I'm going to call on a couple more people, but we have another bill on the committee, and I need us to move quickly. I know Representative Robbins actually just wanted to hear your comments. I believe my conversation with him was that he would certainly get lots of feedback on his legislation from the Education Policy Committee. And so if we will continue to be extremely brief, I would appreciate it. Representative Gidley.
Well, Representative Smith pretty much covered
Thank you.
what I was trying to say. So
Perfect. Representative Drummond.
Real quickly, I know that in the Montgomery career prep classes, they teach this. And quite frankly, the kids who I talked to about it, they thought it was useless. But one of the things that one of the questions, because you know how the kids will say, there's an app for that. I know that you're talking about banning, but are you going to ban apps and all of that? I'm just trying to get some kind of clarification. I know you say you can answer those, but those are questions I would ask the educational
Well, I'll answer your question, and I'll try to be brief, which is difficult for me.
I know that.
But
and everyone in here, thank you.
It's difficult.
But ban, I'm not banning anything. Ban is not a good word. I'm not banning it. That it's still going to be out there, still going to be in use in Alabama. I'm just saying we're limiting the access. So it's not a ban. There's a difference between the two. And so.
But realistically, they're apps. And so we would be telling that we won't be using this app. And I agree with my cohort, Representative Smith.
Thank
you. I mean, I think what you're doing is very noble, and we need to look into it, but I think it needs to be done right rather than just biting the apple. I think that we need to look at it, because I agree.
Well,
like I said, I got a 7-year-old who showed me things on my phone that I didn't know exist.
Well, I'm in complete agreement. And the last thing I'll say is that article I gave everybody with the U.S. Surgeon General, he made a plea to the technology industry and legislators across America, especially the federal government. You need to get together to protect our children. And so with what you said, I'd be more than willing to sit down and talk with you on how we take a big bite of the apple instead of little nibbles. And so this was part of what I wanted to be, was a little nibble to start the conversation with who wanted to be a part of it, and say, how do we take the whole issue on, as opposed to just nip at the edges.
Thank you. Representative Woods.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Representative, I just had a question about the implementation of this in other states or other systems. Do you have any examples of where this has been done?
This was done, this basically almost word for word from Florida. So this is a Florida bill that I changed just a little bit.
Is that the only other state that you know of, or is there others?
I didn't do a exhaustive list after I found something that kind of matched with what I was trying to do.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, do I hear a motion? We have an amendment offered. Do we have a copy of it here?
Yes, ma'am.
Everyone?
You and the clerk.
Okay. Would you read the amendment?
Sure. So it should be a friendly amendment from the sponsor. I don't think it addresses any of the questions that were have been given today, but on line 37 on page 2, I think it says local board of education through school period, and this would just be a comma unless used for educational purposes, and that was an amendment that the sponsor of the bill wanted offered. So I offered that amendment.
I hear a motion for an amendment. Do I hear a second? Second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, do I hear a motion for the bill?
I'll make a motion to give it a favorable report.
Do I hear a second? Second. We have a motion and a second. All in favor of giving the bill a favorable report, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
No.
I don't believe the bill was given a favorable report, but I do believe you've got a lot of good information to take back and a lot of people to work with on this issue. And I agree with the importance of this issue. Thank you, Representative.
Well, thank you for your time. Thank you, committee. And I do look forward to working with you all.
Perfect. Thank you. Representative Woods. The last bill is a public hearing. We will not be voting on this bill, but I would like to get the information out. And so we're going to begin the public hearing. I'm going to ask 2, 4, 6, 7 to limit your comments to less than 2 minutes. Our clerk's going to, 2 minutes.
3, 5, 4.
If you could be less, that would be great. And I'm going to call you up once if you'll introduce yourself, and hopefully I will get your name correctly. And so I believe only opponents have actually signed up for this. And Representative Butler, I'm having the public hearing first so you can hear, and then I'm going to let you explain it, and then we'll ask questions at the end. Thank you. So first up in the public hearing is James Miller.
Good morning, committee. My name is James Miller. I'm in House District 4. I'm here to speak out today again in opposition to this bill. I was a teacher in the state of Alabama for 31 years, first in Birmingham City, then Representative Collins in Morgan County for 14 years, and then Huntsville City. I was a counselor, a math teacher. I have multiple degrees, and I'm nationally board certified as a counselor. So this bill has some very vague language that will be used to punish teachers and counselors. There's no other way to get around that. There are a number of ways counselors assess students. We have concrete assessments, which are papers, Beck's depression inventory, suicidal ideation inventories, that are paper-based. There are also other ways. The most common way is we have a conversation. We look at a child and say, how are you today? And if that child says, I'm having a bad day, am I supposed to call their parent right then and tell them they're having a bad day? You're adding work to teachers that just isn't fair. And so one of the things that I'm going to give you is a scenario that I dealt with as a counselor quite a while. This bill speaks to the mental health of children. I've had children come up to me and tell me during my career that they suffer physical and emotional abuse from parents and caregivers. Okay, that's a change in mental health. So Megan's Law says I have anonymity if I have to call and report this. This bill says I got to call and tell the parent that their child is coming to me, telling me that they're being abused. Do you see a conflict there? That's going to be a huge problem. Not to mention, one of the primary foundations of teacher-student relationships and counselors is trust. If you come to me and you tell me you're having a bad day, and it's because your mom got rid of your cat, and I have to call mom and say, okay, your child's depressed over this, that child's gonna go home and get in trouble. But let's push it even further to the point of a child who has to come out and tell a teacher or somebody they trust, I'm trans, I'm gay, I'm part of this community, I don't know what to do. But if I go home and tell my parents, I face homelessness, I was one of those kids, had I been outed when I was a kid, I would have been homeless.
Thank you, Mr. Miller. I appreciate it. Next, I call up Cecil Pinkston.
Good afternoon. My name is Cecil Pinkston, and I'm a recent high school graduate. And I will be attending the University of Alabama in Birmingham this upcoming fall. As well, I was the former president of my high school's Gay Straight Alliance, and I oppose HB 354. Coming out is a wonderful experience for many individuals, and is imperative that they do it on their own terms. For someone to tell you who they are means that they trust you. If they don't, well, it's for a good reason. When I came out, I was lucky enough to be supported, but for most youth, they aren't as blessed. I know many young adults who have to hide their identities away for their own safety. Well, for example, while I was able to come up to my family, my friend wasn't, because he was going to face homelessness. She was going to face homelessness. They were going to face homelessness. However, we were all freely able to talk to our teachers and tell them how we felt and not fear our parents knowing. This bill will shatter that wall of security, resulting in more adolescents feeling unsafe and abnormal no matter where they go. Being a teenager is hard enough. With the added difficulty of alienation and the government being against you, it just makes it unbearable. I plead with my fellow Alabamians here to vote against HB 354 and for the safety and security of all the queer community in this state. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, I'll call up Audrey Price.
Hello, and thank you for allowing me to speak today. My name is Audrey Price, but you can call me Price or by my drag name Monarch, which is how I'm best known. I'm from District 42, represented by Ivan Smith. HB 354 would ban teachers in K-8 from talking about gender and sexuality, but queer people aren't the only ones with genders and sexualities that children learn about every day. Martha Washington was best known for her marriage to the first president, and Amelia Earhart is best known for being the first woman to fly solo across the Atlantic. Their stories would not be the same without the mention of their genders and sexualities. My request is not that you question what you mean by appropriate for children, but that you recognize that queer gender and sexuality is no differently appropriate than straight gender and sexuality. Why is it okay to talk about the womanhood of Amelia Earhart, but not that of prominent queer figures such as Marsha P. Johnson? And what makes Martha and George Washington's marriage more appropriate for children than that of former Representative Patricia Todd and her wife? The ability of a person, especially a child, to understand their own thoughts and feelings is a good in and of itself. And when we ban talks of gender and sexuality, we stifle their ability to do so. Ideally, we would teach children about these concepts so that they can flourish as fully realized persons, but even if you're not sold on that, it is urgent that we get this right. Queer children's suicide rates are some of the highest among any demographic, with Black queer youth being at the highest risk. 45% of queer children have seriously considered suicide in the past year alone, and queer youth are 4 times more likely to attempt than their straight counterparts. From someone who contributed to this statistic at 15, I know that they don't understand themselves. They feel as they're the only people in the world that feel the way that they do, and they don't see themselves receiving the same humanity that their peers are given. Banning discussions of gender and sexuality would not only stifle all children's abilities to understand themselves, but would make the queer suicide rate worse than it already is. Vote no. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Price. Next, I call up Jessica Brandon.
Good afternoon, representatives, and thank you so much for your time. My name is Jessica Brandon. You can call me Jessie Alex, and I am a constituent of House District 91. Simply put, passing this bill would directly lead to an increase in the suicide rates of Alabama youth. Research shows that LGBTQ+ youth are less likely to attempt suicide by 40% if they have just one supportive adult in their lives. Many young kids cannot rely on their parents to be that supportive adult. Instead, they turn to their teachers, their counselors, or even their coaches. Preventing educators from being supportive adults in the lives of LGBTQ+ youth will cause more Alabama youth to be driven to attempt suicide. The only reason why a child would not be open about their identity in their homes is because of fear of facing abuse or getting kicked out. Removing the ability of teachers to talk about these issues robs these kids of their safety. It puts them in further danger of abuse and neglect behind closed doors. As of 2021, we are ranked 47th in the nation for education, as well as the 3rd worst state in the entire country for overall child well-being. This bill will plummet those ratings even more and encourage strong, talented students to leave. For example, I am an alumnus of the Alabama School of Math and Science, who went on to college and graduate with a double major in German and International Studies, all while receiving a Fulbright grant at the conclusion of my studies. Because of bills like this and what Alabama is becoming, I am more tempted than ever to leave for good. This bill would persuade the brilliant minds of the School of Math and Science, Fine Arts, and other schools to pack up, take their talents elsewhere, and never look back. You're looking at the best teachers, doctors, engineers, and potential political colleagues gone in a generation if a bill like this goes into effect. LGBTQ youth in the state deserve better than this bill, and all Alabama youth deserve better. And if you care about the future of this state, vote no on HB 354. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Brandon. Next, I call Megan Harold.
Hello, and thank you for the opportunity to speak to you guys today. My name is Megan Harold. I am a Alabama citizen in District 10. I'm a registered nurse, and I'm a mother of 2 children that are in public elementary school. I'm here to ask you to oppose HB 354. As a nurse, I'm concerned on how this bill could affect the health of gay and trans youth. Schools are often where students learn how healthcare professionals can help them. Gay and trans youth will not go away because we refuse to talk about them. They will just have to fight harder to learn about healthcare, counseling, and their basic rights. Sex education in schools is important. Inadequate sex education only leads to teens making uninformed choices. This leads to teen pregnancy and the spread of STIs. While providing sex education can prevent sexual assault, making these restricted topics will only open opportunities for bullying, and it can infringe on my children's right to free speech. And that makes children wind up in my hospital. The current state of American healthcare does not need any more roadblocks to caring for our community. There are already laws that are making it harder or illegal for us to provide the best medical care. This bill would do more of that. The teachers, the nurses, and the doctors of Alabama are here to inform and help kids. As one of the people that everyone was calling a hero a couple years ago, please do not make our job harder. As a parent, I am raising open-minded humans who are free to be themselves. I am proud that I am raising the next leaders of our state and our country. Reading this bill, I was concerned about how it could affect my children. If my child is gay or trans, will this bill allow the school faculty to tell them that they cannot or they should not talk about it at school? My children have a right to free speech just like you and I. Gender and sexuality are not taboo topics. Gay and trans children will always exist, and they should not be hushed or shamed for who they are. And saying that you can't talk about it in school is shaming these children. As a parent raising the next generation, I will not stand for that. The purpose of the House is to represent the citizens, and I can assure you that this is not a priority for most Alabamians. I'm here, standing here as proof of that. With this in mind, I'm asking you to vote no on House Bill 354.
Thank
For
you.
your time.
Next, I call Kara Messina.
Hello, my name is Dr. Kara Messina. I have my PhD in English, specifically focusing on writing, rhetoric, and pedagogy, which is, what this committee is for, correct? I have taught writing and rhetoric at Jacksonville State University for 2 years. Students often come to me after class, during office hours, and yes, even during their writing, talking to their peers and in speech, to tell me how important it is to have a safe space for them to be able to talk about their gender and sexuality. They were not able to do this often growing up. Representative Collins, I'm really glad to hear that you care about students' mental health. And this bill will only continue to hurt students' mental health. Young kids who are gay, trans, bisexual, and lesbians need a safe space to be able to talk about and learn their identity. I strongly oppose this bill, not just because it will hurt only LGBTQ+ students, but it will hurt everyone. As a reminder, Alabama is one of the lowest states in terms of education. And let me tell you, it is not because of discussions of gender and sexuality in K through 5. I wish the Education Committee would instead focus on how to improve Alabama's education system, like focusing on retaining teachers by paying them more, or reworking curriculum, instead of trying to continue to marginalize LGBTQ+ people. In fact, this bill's commitment to stopping diversity goes against educational research. Research in education has shown time and time again the positive impact of being exposed to diversity in learning and growing. You can pick up any current peer-reviewed journal article, any current peer-reviewed book, and that is what it will say: the importance of learning about diversity. This bill, again, will not only hurt LGBTQ+ students, right, but also it will hurt Alabama's education. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. And last, we have Ems Donaldson.
Hello, thank you for the chance to address you all today. My name is Emrys Donaldson. I'm here in a personal capacity. I'm a constituent of House District 36, a trans man, and a professor at Jacksonville State, where I mentor our trans and gender nonconforming students. I'm here to ask you to please vote no on HB 354. As some of the other speakers have mentioned, this bill goes out of its way in its attempt to isolate youth who might be questioning their identities and need some answers at school. These young people need our support. They also deserve to learn that they're not the only one, that there are other people like them, and that there is a place for them here in Alabama as adults. This bill opens students up to potential abuse and harassment in the family home. On a daily basis in my work, I work with young people who have been subject to that, who have been homeless, for example, because someone outed them to their parents as trans, even before they went through any aspects of transition. This bill will fracture families in that way. And it means more young people of all identities will be leaving Alabama. Please vote no on this bill. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And that concludes our public hearing. Representative Butler, I want to thank you for being here today. And I'd like to ask you to share your reasons for presenting your bill, and then we'll take questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members. And I did get to spend from 2014 to 2018 as a member of this committee, and I firsthand know how important your jobs are. The most precious resource we have are our young people. I spent 10 years on the Etowah County Board of Education, 2 terms as its president. This bill, of course, we've been working, and I know there's going to be no vote taken on it this session. We're working on this for the next session. And we've been working with AESB and SSA, to school leaders and superintendents. This bill will simply take the bill y'all passed last year, the K-5, and expand it to K-12. We talked about K, but we're going to K-12, and it just simply, every parent that's talked to me doesn't want the school teaching this and the indoctrination. Have not had a single person come, a parent opposing this to me, but just simply will keep them from gender identity and sexual orientation. Let's keep the school focused on reading, writing, and arithmetic, and let's get our graduation rates up, make these good, productive citizens. Our young people have been through so much in the last couple of years through COVID. I mean, I know they're resilient, but they've had so much adversity. This just keeps the school from pushing an agenda that you can clearly see if you watch the media. And yes, it is happening in Alabama. Some of you may not be aware of it, but I promise you it is happening right now. You've got some teachers that are pushing an agenda that are not teaching the reading, writing, arithmetic, but they're teaching their own preference on some things. And that's just not the place for it. And, as we're working through the bill, we originally modeled it after the Texas bill, and we're making it the Alabama bill and working with all our partners. Literally today, talking to AESB about some future amendments that we're going to do just to keep modifying and moving it to get it something we could all agree on. But this is to not take away from any individual of who they are. It will prohibit the school from the indoctrination on it and providing some parental rights that have not been there previously. The parents are the ones paying the bills in the loop that have the most vested interest. As a father, I've always told my children, there's not another man on this earth that has their vested interest at heart like I do. And I'm sure that's for every one of you. We want the absolute best, whatever that is, but would keep the school from pushing that agenda. And I welcome welcome the input of these people today on this. But that's simply the goal of it.
Thank you, Representative Butler. Do I have questions? Representative Gidley.
Thank you, Representative Butler. Let me, just a couple of things. A couple of things were mentioned in the comments earlier was that if a child had a problem or they were maybe suicidal, they're dealing with something, that this would prevent them from being able to contact the parent. Is that anywhere in this bill?
Well, if the student went to and it didn't deal with a lot of things. Some people are talking about some stuff that it doesn't deal with, but it's just simply the gender identity and sexual orientation. that it would, if you went and talked to the counselor, it does require them to notify the parent. It's part of the
But it would
parental right.
not prevent them from
No, not
dealing
at
with the parent. Okay, all right.
Yeah, you just keep the parents in the loop. And I know as a school board member, we had a problem even in some of our schools that the parents were on the outside and we're not. I mean, literally, parents called me for a number of years. I was the only school board member of school-age children. So I had a different perspective than the other members had. But we had parents that could not get a phone call answered or returned. And that's just unacceptable. The parents need to be in the loop of the child's education.
Representative Drummond.
My favorite.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I've got a lot of questions, so I'll get with you offline, because one of the things you said a moment ago is that there are some teachers who are teaching stuff.
Yes, ma'am.
But in your bill, you're giving responsibility to teachers to go and notify parents when there is student services or monitoring related to students' mental health, emotional, physical, and so forth and so forth. So now are we making our teachers be the one responsible if they deem something inappropriate, which you say some are already doing it? That seems somewhat contradictory.
And our teachers are mandatory reporters, as you know, anyway. But yes, it puts everybody in the loop if there's something going on to get with the parents. But the bill that we introduced is not the bill that we have today. With AASB and SSA, we have greatly modified that bill.
And again, this word keeps popping up, age appropriateness.
We actually deleted that because it's too subjective. We didn't want anything subjective in it, but that has actually been stricken.
So you have not worked with all of these persons who have just testified before the public
I
hearing?
have not heard from these beautiful people yet.
Are you willing to listen to them?
Listen, anyway, I work for the people, as you do.
Yeah, and I sit here every week, and it's a toil sometimes. Like today, I think this bill is a toil for me because it's a judgmental bill, and I think that we need to hear all voices, and so that we can make good policies.
Absolutely.
And I was sitting there waiting for the other side to testify, but no one else did. So it says to me that you keep saying that it's a problem. I want to know what the problem is, and I don't know if the education community can tell me what that is, or are we trying to dictate behavior to a community? No one else testified on the other side to give me a full picture, and I was hoping you would give me that full picture, and I didn't get it.
The State Board of Education does dictate curriculum, and this is not part of curriculum, but some of them have gone off the reservation and have done it, because I know firsthand of some that have gotten in trouble for it.
Is the State Department of Education or any of our educational groups supporting this piece of legislation?
I have talked to them. I don't think they're getting involved, to be honest.
And is there a reason?
I don't know. I can't answer that. But I have talked to ASB and SSA a lot, and to local people back home, and to my local superintendent.
I have served with you a while, so we'll talk offline.
And I welcome your input.
Thank you. I will give it all to you.
It's been a full day. I want to thank our committee. We will probably be called off the floor to talk. I want to thank each and every person who came to the committee today to share your opinions and all too. I do think that our sponsor is willing to listen and consider all the different aspects of it. And as I've worked with this bill already with the sub, and we had amendments, but we are not going to be moving this bill this year, and I appreciate your willingness to work with everybody in the committee. So at this time, we are adjourned.
Hey, good
My
to see
name is
you.
Price.
Just Price.
Yes, I go by my last name. I don't know my first name. I'm from District 42, Chilton County.
Yeah, love Chilton County. Love the peaches.
Oh yes, the peaches.
Was it
That's
Durbin
what we're known
Farm?
for. Oh yeah, Durbin Farms. I actually like Durbin Farms better than Peach Garden. But anyways, that's beside the point. What I wanted to say was, I see how you're concerned about parents not being.
I'm just gonna wait, Alan. I've got another committee right after this, public safety. I'll just be moving seats. We meet at 2:45.
Feel the heat.
You're not swimming. understand that, especially with
Me too,
in terms of suicide. I feel that if someone expresses suicidal ideation, that their parents should be kept in the loop. But with things like sexual orientation and gender identity, I'll just share with you this. When I was 17, I came out to my mother and she ripped our family apart. Limb from limb. Every single one of us. Me and my mother don't have. I was 17 and I came out and our family has not.
Oh,
That is so good. That is so good for y'all. Oh yeah. I understand that, but if I were to have been outed before 17, I came out on my own terms at 17, but if I had been outed by the school before that, our family would have lost it sooner, and I don't know if I would have survived that because I barely survived it at 17. So if I had experienced that earlier, I don't think that I would have survived it.
Are we in 206?
I agree.
Move ours to 200.
And I agree. I just know that families aren't like that. No, I am not alone in this experience. A lot of my friends have faced homelessness and kicked out of their families, have been victims of violence because of their identities. So I just want you to know that when you keep a parent in the loop about gender and sexuality, not necessarily about suicide and on that front, but when you do out a child to their parents, there are going to be people that are victims of abuse, that are victims of what I was a victim of when my mother did what she did. So I just and then I'm gonna need you to read our next 10 minutes. Right.
Just heard somebody say we moved to 200.
That's a purple bill. It keeps fucking me up.
I never heard that.
That's what I heard. I heard 200.
All right, Bill.
Jennifer, I've had 2 or 3 others in here on education policy. They said it got moved to 200.
Yeah, so they moved to 200.